The national government has a lot of corners where it can get money, where it can make haircuts, and be able to still balance be able to balance its budget. The county governments, first of all, the money goes to the county governments. The way it is handled by this house, we don't have cases of budgeted corruption in the DORA. There's no budgeted corruption there. The money is really worked out meticulously, and it is meticulously tied to the needs of counties, almost as a way you prescribe rare medicine for a rare disease. So I really plead with this house that we reject this report and we make sure that what was allocated to the counties, because it was not based on the current finances of government, it was based on some couple of years back, is not interfered with, and the national government looks for haircuts in other sections, and especially that money that you have refused to devolve. It can look at that and see, because the counties are doing the functions, it can make cuts without crippling its operations. With those few remarks, I ask the majority leader to lead us in rejecting this negotiated position so that we can fly the flag of devolution high and be able to have some chance at realizing the objectives of devolution. With those few remarks, yes.
Senator Okoiti, are you done?
No, there's a point of what I was raised, so I'm just about to
the Speaker has not allowed Senator Ojwang to, but what is your point of order, Senator Kajwang?
Mr. Speaker, is it in order for Senator Mtata to direct the leader of majority to take certain actions and make certain decisions? Yet, just this afternoon, he has launched his exploratory committee to be the next president of Kenya. He could just wait to be the president, and then he gives the county more money. So why would he want Senator Cheriot to go and do the right things that will make his president popular and deny him votes? So is it in order for him to shoot himself in the foot on the floor of the House? Or is he taking Kenyans for a ride with his presidential ambitions, Mr. Speaker?
I'm very sure you listened to Senator Okoiti, and as he was just about to close, he made reference to those few remarks. Yet he's been on the floor for more than 25 minutes plus or so. I'm sure even the extent of his directive to the majority leader probably would also be one of those jokes that as a leader, he does it in form of the normal banter. But Senator Okoiti, please conclude so that other members are allowed to speak.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, sir. It is true that I want to be President of the Republic of Kenya. And when I'm President of the Republic of Kenya, things like this will not happen because I will have separated the Treasury from the Ministry of Finance, and the Treasury will be run professionally. And we shall be we shall enter an era of balanced budgets. There will be no deficits. With those few remarks, I oppose this bill, this report. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Thank you, Senator Omtata. Senator Osotsi, Godfrey Atieno, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to also comment on this very important bill, the Division of Revenue Amendment Bill 2024 and the Mediation Committee report. Mr. Speaker, just like my two colleagues who have spoken before me, I, from the onset, declare that I am going to oppose this report. Because, Mr. Speaker, I'm in this House because of Article 96 of the Constitution, which is to protect counties and their government. And, Mr. Speaker, we will be setting a wrong precedent as a House, that we pass DORA And that is one of the major constitutional powers that we have as a Senate. We pass a DORA, and then it is brought back to us to adjust the figures downwards, and we easily agree to that. That, Mr. Speaker, it is not something that we should entertain as a Senate. We are here to protect devolution, and by all ways, Mr. Speaker, this decision to reduce the shareable revenue from 400 billion that we had passed to now 387 billion. It is going to be unprecedented, and it will make those enemies of Senate who have been saying Senate has no space in this country to have a case, Mr. Speaker, to have a justification. I am opposed to that. And Mr. Speaker, I listened to the President speak the other day. And in his speech, which we are debated today, one fundamental thing that he said that there has been a rise in revenue levels. He said that, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if there has been a rise in national revenues, why are we being told a different story here? We are being told that the revenue, we have a revenue shortfall. So if there is a rise, which has been communicated to this House by the head of state and is in our record, why would this House go for a lower figure when there is a rise in revenues? Mr. Speaker, because of that contradiction, that in this report they are talking of a shortfall, but the head of state, who is in charge of government, is talking about a rise in revenue. Because of that contradiction, Mr. Speaker, I will not support this report. I will reject it, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the National Assembly has not reduced their allocation to CDF. They have not touched CDF. Why is it that they are agreeing to lower the figure for counties and CDF remains untouched? We are going to look so bad before our own people as senators that the members of the National Assembly have their way on CDF, but senators, we don't have our way. So what is our role as a Senate? So, Mr. Speaker, again on that note, I will reject this report. Mr. Speaker, the DORA 2024, under Section 5, it says very clearly that in case of a revenue shortfall, it shall be borne by the national government. Similarly, in case of excess revenue collection, it shall accrue to the national government and may be used to reduce the deficit or defray public debt. Mr. Speaker, because of this reason, I will reject this report. Because if the revenues have gone down, that should not be a burden of counties, that should be a burden of the national government to look for ways of managing the shortfall. Mr. Speaker, the additional funding that we sought, that took us to 400 billion shillings, was meant to deal with the additional funding that was required as a result of policies that were introduced by the national government. For example, the housing levy, Mr. Speaker, the enhanced NSSF contribution, the issue of counterpart funding for community health promoters, and also the county aggregation and industrial park. Mr. Speaker, this has enhanced the budgetary requirement of our counties. And because of that, this Senate thought it was wise that we peg the figure at 400 billion. Mr. Speaker, if we go to 387 billion, it means we will not have resolved this problem, Mr. Speaker, of the additional expenditure as a result of national government policies. But, Mr. Speaker, because of that, again, I will reject this report. Mr. Speaker, having said that, I know there is a lot of argument every time people want to deny counties money. They say there are governance and accountability problems in our county. Yes, we agree, they are. But we cannot use that as the main justification of denying our counties money. The Constitution is very clear that 15% of the national revenues should go to the counties. So we cannot use that as a basis of denying our counties money. And Mr. Speaker, you know, it is becoming very difficult to manage our counties. I know they have accountability problems, but again, it's becoming very difficult because, one, there is delay in dispersing money from Treasury to CRF, and then when the money gets to CRF, there is another office in this country called the Controller of Budget. Mr. Speaker, counties are spending millions of money traveling from their counties just to come and submit papers seeking approval for requisition, when the Controller of Budget has officers in every county. What are they doing in that county? Mr. Speaker, why has the Controller of Budget not automated that office so that those operations that counties come to do to Nairobi, they can do it online and have the requisitions processed online? But, Mr. Speaker, the office of the Controller of Budget is a crime scene. It's a crime scene, Mr. Speaker, where the CEC for Finance, the CEOs for Finance carry millions of money to come and bribe officers at the Controller of Budget so that the requisitions are passed. I have met so many CECs in this town, Mr. Speaker, who are desperate, staying here for days, chasing their requisition. Why can't this office be made efficient?
Senator
Why
Mandago.
can't this office be accountable to the
Senator
people of
Osotsi.
Kenya, Mr. Speaker?
Senator Osotsi, there is a point of order from Senator Mandago.
Mandago can inform me.
It's actually a point of order. Senator
But he cannot oppose.
I'm sorry, Senator Otsosi, I'm not informing you, but I'm rising on a point of order on Standing Order 105 on the statement of facts. You know, Honorable Speaker, when the Senator for Vihiga makes sweeping statements that millions of money is being carried to bribe officers from the Controller of Budget, can he table evidence, Honorable Speaker? It is not that all officers in the Controller of Budget are corrupt unless he tables evidence, and if he has that evidence, Honorable Speaker, he knows there are institutions in this country mandated to act on those matters. Honorable Speaker, I think members should not use the floor because of the parliamentary privileges to make sweeping statements on institutions, because those who serve in those institutions have also spent a fortune of their lifetime building a career. Where there is, Otsosi should provide evidence instead of making a wholesale statement that affects a whole institution, which is also a constitutional institution. Thank you, Speaker.
Senator Osotsi, I remind you of the Standing Order number 105 on responsibility for statement of fact. And this is what it says: a senator shall be responsible for the accuracy of any facts that the senator alleges to be true and may be required to substantiate any such facts instantly. With your reference to the millions of money that is being taken around by CECs and CEOs to bribe the officers from the control of budget. That is what the point of order that Madago is saying. Are you able to substantiate?
Mr. Speaker, Senator Mandago has been a governor, and I think he needs to be honest to himself. I cannot substantiate the obvious, Mr. Speaker. I have heard that from several governors who have complained about that office, that nothing moves until the hands of some people are greased. And Mr. Speaker, on this one, I cannot substantiate. And I cannot withdraw, Mr. Speaker, because this is the obvious. And this is, I'm saying this because my role under Article 96 is to protect counties. And one of the biggest challenges in this country is that office of the control of budget. We either reform that office or we remove that office from the Constitution, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that it is important that the National Assembly assist this country by making sure that devolution works. There is an attitude in the National Assembly that counties are competing them in terms of development. Mr. Speaker, I think it's important that our member colleagues in the National Assembly appreciate the
Senator,
contribution of devolution to this country, Mr. Speaker.
Allow Senator Osotsi to conclude on his remarks, unless it's very critical. Proceed.
Mr. Speaker, for protection of the integrity of the House, especially the chair allowed the point of order by the Senator of Uasin Gishu, requesting that Senator Osotsi substantiates his allegations. Instead of putting the evidence that Senator Mandago requested for, he has told you he can't substantiate the obvious. So we are waiting for your ruling. You rule
Senator,
so that the House, personally,
Hambane,
I was waiting for evidence to show that Margaret Nyakiango is corrupt.
he actually has admitted that he cannot substantiate that statement. He did that.
Yes.
He did that.
Then he said he will not withdraw and he will not apologize. So help us.
Senator Osotsi, in your confirmation that you cannot substantiate the allegation that money is shared from among the officers who are oiling the officers of the control of budget, in the absence of any substantiation, you have got no option but to withdraw that particular statement.
Mr. Speaker, on the basis that I cannot be able to produce the hard evidence in this House, I'll withdraw. But I want the House to get it very clearly that there is a problem at that office and we cannot deny it. We know it exists. But one day, someone doing his job will have to get the evidence and the evidence will be produced. Yes, he can inform me.
Senator Kadzwang, proceed to inform me.
Mr. Speaker, the issue of people going to the Control of Budgets office with envelopes has been there. But I want to inform Senator Osotsi that there's something called Form C, and it's a real form in that workflow. At the very minimum, the CEC Finance will be carrying Form C. So, Senator Osotsi, it might not be very useful for us to appear as if we are castigating a constitutional office. But I can tell you that that Form C is the one that needs to be eliminated from that process. Because as long as the CEC Finance must carry Form C from Lamu to Nairobi, it then creates wrong impressions of rent seeking. And we must help the control of budget to automate the process, to automate the workflows, to gain visibility into the contents of accounts of county governments so that we get rid of the Form C. And Senator Osotsi, I do not know whether sometimes you do this when you go to withdraw money from your bank account, because counties are going to withdraw money from their account. Sometimes you can be served nicely by the lady teller. She smiles nicely at you. She walks up and down in a manner that entices you, so that once you have withdrawn your money, you can give her a 1,000 shilling in appreciation. I hope that is not the instances you're referring to as millions exchanging hands, but from where I sit, that Form C must be eliminated so that nobody, like Senator Murango, walks around with brown envelopes going to the Control of Budget's office. But, Mr. Speaker, the Control of Budget as a constitutional office bearer, this House should never be seen to be casting aspersions on her conduct.
Senator Osotsi, you are informed. You may proceed to...
Thank you for that information, Senator Kajwang. Indeed, Senator Kajwang has informed me on the aspect of the CECs having to come to Nairobi with that form, because it doesn't make sense, Mr. Speaker, that we have officers of the Control of Budget who are in our counties, working with our counties. They see those requisitions in the counties, and they still have to, the CECs have still to bring those documents in Nairobi for further processing. It doesn't make sense. Counties, for example, have stayed for almost 1 month waiting for their requisitions to be approved, Mr. Speaker. It doesn't make sense at all. Mr. Speaker, with those few remarks, I want to say I reject this report.
Senator Mandago Jackson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, from the onset, I rise to support this report by the Committee of Finance, Honorable Speaker, on the division of revenue between counties. Honorable Speaker, as much as we have the responsibility of protecting counties and devolution as a Senate, we must also be realistic, Honorable Speaker, to the circumstances and the happenings within the country. Honorable Speaker, this House had passed, and National Assembly had agreed with us that counties can receive 400 billion shillings for the current financial year, Honorable Speaker. But, Honorable Speaker, the unprecedented events that happened in this country is what has necessitated the change, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, the finance bill that had been passed by Parliament had put in revenue-raising measures that would then have ensured that counties would be able to receive what we as Senate had passed. Honorable Speaker, therefore, the mediation committee from the Senate, led by the Chair of Finance, in my view, Honorable Speaker, have done a tremendous job by making sure that the reduction was not what the National Assembly had proposed of 380 billion, but reached a consensus of 387 billion, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, considering the months we have to the end of the financial year and the time we have to collect revenue to be able to fill in the gap that we had envisaged, Honorable Speaker, it's only reasonable and practical that as a Senate, we consider the amount that the mediation committee has come up with to enable our counties to function, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, it is possible, and I say this from experience as a governor, that it is possible for you to be allocated a very high figure on the paper, but it becomes impossible for that money to be dispersed, Honorable Speaker. And what does that do, Honorable Speaker? Because we have another monster we have been grappling with as a Senate, and even as national government too, and county governments, the aspect of pending bills, Honorable Speaker. Most of the pending bills we have in counties and in national government has been caused by overestimating the revenues and the income you are going to receive. Honorable Speaker, we shall put suppliers of goods and services to counties in jeopardy if, as a Senate, we are going to insist that counties receive 400 billion, which our national revenues may not be able to raise. We shall make counties commit suppliers and contractors to works whom they will not be able to pay, Honorable Speaker. We cannot solve a problem by creating another problem, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, therefore, I want to persuade my colleagues, honorable senators, that indeed we have a mandate to protect devolution, and that protection of devolution includes making sure that we are realistic, that the suppliers and contractors in the counties will be paid by voting in revenues that will be accessed and that will be available, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, it should not be lost on us that the very, very same people who are against the revenue-raising measures would still also want for increase of share of revenue to counties. Honorable Speaker, as Kenyans, we must begin having a very honest conversation, particularly when it comes to development. We have a choice as Kenyans, and we make a decision and say, let's reduce the taxes that we are paying, but then let us also reduce the expectation in terms of development, both from county governments and from national government. And we therefore have to live within the revenues that we shall be able to raise, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, on the issue of release of funds, and we appreciate that there has been a delay in disbursement to counties, Honorable Speaker, and I want to agree with Senator Okiya Omtata, Honorable Speaker, that the National Treasury, the current National Treasury as set, behaves and acts as an agent of national government. National Treasury, Honorable Speaker, in fact, I think as a House, we should begin considering amendments to the PFM Act and make the National Treasury independent treasury, and we have an independent Ministry of Finance for national government, Honorable Speaker, so that the National Treasury can then serve the two levels of government fairly, equitably, and in a manner that promotes the two levels of government growth. Honorable Speaker, as it is, when it comes to disbursement of funds, priority is being given by National Treasury to national government, Honorable Speaker. I say this from experience. You would find salaries for county government staff delaying while their counterparts in national government receive their salaries earlier than even 30th of every month, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, National Treasury should realize that they are a National Treasury that serves both two levels of government, and they must make sure they are fair in their processes. Honorable Speaker, the other problem that comes when, with disbursement of funds is the issue of this IFMI system, that the officers in the National Treasury has made it almost impossible for that. I don't know whether the system is old, it needs to be re-engineered or needs to be done away with and we get another system. The downtime of that system, especially when it comes towards the end of the financial year, Honorable Speaker, has always been almost 50–60% in making it difficult for counties to be able to pay their suppliers, their contractors on time because of the downtime that is experienced through IFMIS. But Honorable Speaker, the downtime of IFMIS sometimes has been used by National Treasury actually to manage disbursement to counties. Honorable Speaker, we don't want the culture that we have seen in the past in National Treasury. The funds to counties must be disbursed on time. We don't want the National Treasury that makes sure every 30th of June of every year they begin publishing in the daily newspapers the amounts of money available in the county revenue accounts, money that was sent a day or 3 days to the end of the financial year, and expecting counties to expend those funds within the 3 days, Honorable Speaker. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, as a Senate, we should amend the Public Finance Management Act to make sure that the National Treasury is independent and makes it possible for counties to access money on time. Honorable Speaker, on the issue of the Office of the Controller of Budget, I want to agree with my colleague, Senator Kajwang, that the inefficiencies that we have in the Controller of Budget's office is a system issue, is a process issue, and we need to have a conversation with the Controller of Budget on automation of the processes. And Honorable Speaker, counties should then be able to use the automated processes to requisition funds and eliminate the aspect of traveling. Honorable Speaker, the traveling to the Controller of Budget is not limited to the requirement by the Controller of Budget. Sometimes counties and officers within the Department of Treasury in counties, Honorable Speaker, use it as an opportunity to get a chance to travel out, Honorable Speaker. And you know the motivation of traveling to Nairobi, Honorable Speaker, is very high. This being the capital city of the Republic of Kenya, and you know also the allowances are fairly good. We are happy ourselves as a county of Uasin Gishu that now Eldoret is a city, so that Otsotsi and Vihiga County can take their conferences to Eldoret, Honorable Speaker, and also boost tourism, Honorable Speaker. Therefore, the problem of traveling is not really necessarily just limited to the issue of the control of office, but we must also, as a Senate, interrogate the travel by counties, whether really they are related. People could be, officers could be traveling in the excuse of going to the controller budget, yet they have actually no issues to transact at the controller of budget's office. So I therefore, Honorable Speaker, want to say I support and I want to persuade my colleagues that we support this report by the mediation committee led by our chair of finance here at the Senate, so that our counties can be able to access funds. Honorable Speaker, we do appreciate that we have very little time. If counties have to achieve the targets they have set for this financial year, then the sooner we clear this to make the funds available to them, the better. But we must also say that our counties have not been performing as expected, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, when you look at the functions that are devolved and what has been done for the first financial year, second financial year, there's a big challenge. I'll tell you, Honorable Speaker, in my own county, Honorable Speaker, for the last 2 financial years, there is no single ECD classroom that has been constructed, and funds have always been voted for construction of ECDs. We therefore want to urge our governors to be hands-on in monitoring the implementation of the county programs and make sure that the funds that we allocate as Senate and Central counties are then utilized to offer services to the respective citizens of the counties, Honorable Speaker. With that, I beg to support this report, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Mandago. Senator Margaret Kamar.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the opportunity. May I start by supporting the report? I support the report dominantly because we don't want to give our governors any excuses. Our governors have been giving us excuses. We don't have money, so we have not paid this and that. And yet we know that the process of development in a county is such that you must have an annual plan. And if governors truly have annual plans, they only plan for the money that they have. And we should not be having a lot of pending bills. So the pending bills have been one excuse, and we don't want to be part of that excuse. So I would support that we get the money released so that the governors can move on and get things going. But all the same, Mr. Speaker, I still think that we have not given counties enough money up to now from the inception of devolution, because it is a fact that we have functions in Schedule 4 of the Constitution, and those functions are different for the national government and the county government. And it's extremely important that we start ensuring that money follows functions. It is therefore very important that when we are dividing the money, we actually don't just divide arbitrarily, but we make sure that the functions are funded according to what we are right now. In fact, if we did that, Mr. Speaker, we may not need new money. All we need to do is to shrink the Ministry of Agriculture accordingly, because there are people who have not been devolved even when agriculture was devolved. The same thing with the Ministry of Health. The Ministry of Health was devolved dominantly, but the personnel we have in Afia House are still intact. So we need to ask ourselves, what is it we devolved, and then we follow it with the money. And if we did that, that may not even require new money. It may just require that we relocate the money to where the function has gone. Mr. Speaker, that is very important because for you to be able to account for any function, you must have the right budget to cover the same function. So for that, I really would insist to this House that for the future, we need to sit early, we need to discuss early, and we need to make sure that we do that, we make money follow functions. So, Speaker, this House is a house of oversight, and we must make sure that we do what is required of us. Mr. Speaker, I would like to go to the other side again and thank His Excellency, the President, for the speech that he made on Thursday, because it touches also on what we are doing in Dora. In the funding that, in the speech of the President, he did locate money where he was emphasizing the development of the government. And it is very important, again, that we read through so that we spend according to what we think we are going to fulfill. Mr. Speaker, in his speech, the President touched on university funding, and I want to touch on that because I came from there before I joined politics. And the current university funding model is a model that, if it is understood by all, it's a very good model. The model that we have been given is a unit cost model, that the cost of doing law is different from the cost of doing medicine. And it's very important that we recognize that. For many years, the universities have been given a global fund according to the number of students that they have. When that is done, it is very difficult even for the universities to attract students from outside. So most universities have shied away from attracting students from outside this nation because the fee they would give would be completely different from the fee that we have. And if you look at the East African community privileges, it is very clear that students in the East African community partner states are supposed to pay their local fees. Now, in Kenya, if you have a student paying local fees in medicine, you will have a very cheap program for a very expensive program. So they'll pay very little, and yet the program is very expensive. So it is very important that the right costing is done for the university programs, and I think and that's exactly what this model is doing. Once the costing has been done, then the government will give its own scholarships and grants, as well as any support that they would like to give in terms of scholarships to students. That is completely a different story altogether. It does not mean that if you have the right costing for a program, that you'll pay the same. You will not have to pay that if the government is paying for you. And that's exactly what this model is doing. What has never been done is to explain this model. It would have been very good to have public participation on the new funding model so that it's exposed to everybody. I sit in the Committee of Education, and even as a Committee of Education, we are having problems trying to understand exactly how the model was until we got the minister to come and explain to us. So that model, I would like to support the President's approach. I support so many other things that he gave in his speech. The other one that I want to mention, Mr. Speaker, is the issue of a university called Moi University. Moi University is the second university in this country. And the problems and the challenges of Moi University are not being analyzed properly. Moi University gave birth to 12 universities. And in giving birth to 12 universities, it spent its own internal resources. Mr. Speaker, it will surprise you that the mother university, called University of Nairobi, refused to mother small universities. They had one or two, maybe Kenya Science and Technical University only, because they knew the implication financially. Moi University vice chancellors have been extremely generous. And in their generosity, they even took loans for universities. And in fact, we are trying to see in our committee if we can table those figures, because it is important for the country to know that it has nothing to do with mismanagement. It has to do with generosity of the vice chancellors. So the vice chancellors of Moi University gave birth. They started by giving birth to Maseno University, Masinde Muliro University, Kisi University, Narok University, Karatina University, Mamangina University, all sorts everywhere, top of every corner of this country, including Garissa, which was the baby that they had. And in all those universities, they actually released money to their own investment. It is very important that this analysis is done properly so that Moi University is paid or refunded the money that they spend in the baby universities. Because in their generosity, they have brought everything to a standstill. In their generosity, members of staff are suffering today because their statutories are not being paid, their loans are not being paid, out of generosity of a vice chancellor who did not do the maths that the other universities have done. If you look at the universities that were nursed by KU, there may be 3. The universities that were nursed by Jomo Kenyatta, there may be also about 3. But talk of one more university that nursed 12 universities. There is no way they would have survived. This was a time bomb. It has now arrived. It is at our footstep, it's at the doorstep now, and it has to be sorted out. So even as we are looking at the unit costs of universities, we also need to look at the things that have made the universities not to perform the way they are supposed to perform. Mr. Speaker?
Senator
Yes.
Professor Kamara, you...
My student of Moi University, I will take.
Very well. Senator Kajwang, please proceed to inform Senator
Thank you,
Kamara.
Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Professor Kamar, because she is my teacher, my senior. And I wanted to inform Professor Kamar, who, for the record, when I was at Moi University, she was a very, very highly regarded administrator at Chepkwelel campus. And Mr. Speaker, what I wanted to inform Senator Kamar, when the president came here last week, he said that the challenges at Moi University are governance problems, and that the problems at Moi University are unique. They might not be similar to the problems of University of Nairobi or the funding model as applied to the other institutions, which means that the problem is localized to the council, because it is the university council that has the responsibility of making certain decisions of financial administrative nature. Mr. Speaker, when I was at Moi University, I was the Secretary General, so I would represent the students in the Senate, and I would represent the students in the University Council. And the council that has made the decisions that Senator Kamar has referred to, which she refers to as generosity, and I thought she would refer to it as irresponsibility, still seems to be in the office, in office, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I wanted to inform you that that university, which you worked so hard for, in an era where tribalism was not a factor, the Vice Chancellor, our time, was Professor Rafael Munavu, a man from Ukambani. We had Professor Ole Karei, a man from Narok. We had my own faculty, Professor Kefa Sodini, a man from Western. At the biggest school of social studies, we had Professor Akonga. Mr. Speaker, it was never about the tribe. You didn't have to be one of the boys to be an administrator or to be a dean, to be a head of a department. So I just wanted to inform Professor Kamar that there seems to have been something that went wrong after you left Moi University, that instead of it becoming the bastion for intellectual discourse, it became the bastion for tribal loyalties. And also, Professor Kamar, be informed that a great university decided to buy donkeys to replace tractors. A university that is supposed to train engineers, to train lawyers, to train people who are supposed to run this nation, makes the decision that these tractors are too expensive, let us buy donkeys. So, Mr. Speaker, I wanted to inform Professor Kamar of the things that have happened since the days when her and her team ensured that Moi University was a university of choice, and before Governor Mandago became the governor of Uasin Gishu.
Professor Kamar, you've been informed. Kindly proceed to
Thank
make
you.
your contribution so that
I just wanted to mention that the information is a little bit confusing for my student. It is confusing because it is true that there are governance issues, not just in Moi University, but in all universities in Kenya as we are talking. I just also wanted to mention.
Senator Professor Kamara, Senator Mandago would like to inform you further.
Okay.
Senator Wambua as well. Are you ready to be informed? Very well, Senator Mandago.
Honorable Speaker, I wanted to inform Professor Kamara that she's being misinformed by Senator Kajwang. To the extent that, Honorable Speaker, the citation of various vice chancellors, past vice chancellors from Moi University, Senator Kajwang is trying to drive a certain narrative that I've said in this House I'll be very firm. What Senator Kajwang has conveniently done is to hide the fact that since 2003, Moi University was systematically starved of funds. To the extent that this year, as we sit here, Honorable Speaker, Moi University was just allocated a paltry 5,000 students at the expense of a capacity of 14,000. So Senator Kamar, my learned professor, don't be misinformed by your student who has chosen to take leave.
Senator Wambua had equally requested that he informs you. Proceed, Senator Wambua.
Mr. Speaker, I would rather you just allow the professor and our students to engage on this matter and leave alone other people who are pretenders to the throne, Mr. Speaker. But I respect Senator Madago. Only that he is also trying to misinform my teacher. Mr. Speaker, I want to inform my teacher, Professor Kamara, that she should go back in memory lane and remember where we left Moi University. And Moi University then being called the fountain of knowledge. And that, Mr. Speaker, when we went to Moi University and when she was my teacher at the Moi University, it was never an issue who the Vice Chancellor of Moi University would be, where they come from, or what their qualifications are, for as long as they are qualified to be Vice Chancellors in that university. Mr. Speaker, we were there, and Professor Kerr were there, and Professor Karei, Professor Munavu, Everest Tanda, and it was never an issue where these fine Vice Chancellors came from. The Speaker, from the time that conversations around the office of the Vice Chancellor at Moi University began to take a route of negative ethnicity, that university, Speaker, today is a pale shadow of what it used to be. Mr. Speaker, I submit.
Senator Professor Kamar, I hope you haven't been misinformed or confused by your other students.
My students are even confusing it also further. But I'm going to help them, Mr. Speaker. Because I'm in the Committee of Education, we want to bring some things to make things very clear. Because there are things that are governance issues which exist and we cannot deny in any university. Once upon a time, I was a minister in education. During my time, the President Kibaki started 15 universities. In the 15 universities, Mr. Speaker, the one that was started in Jaramogi Odinga, the tribe was from the village. The one that was started in Kitui, where my other student comes from, also came from there. The one that was started in Karatina, the professor that became the vice chancellor came from there. There was something about having the confidence of the people. I don't know what it was, but always people ran home for interviews. And they ran home for interviews. In fact, Moi University should be congratulated. It is the one that did not have somebody from the neighborhood for a very long time. I think the current Vice Chancellor is the first one that came from that neighborhood. We started from Salamia, from Odhiambo. We went to Kea. One was from South Nyanza, another one from North Nyanza. I call it North Nyanza because it's the opposite of the lake. And Moi University has not had those. So let's not use the tribe, because I know if somebody says I oversaw tribal installations, it actually happened at that time that the people who went back home for interviews, you talk of Masinde Muliro, and the people who go home for interviews are actually from the neighborhood. And we did not mind, so long as the chairman of council was from outside. And these universities came to prominence. But I love my students because they love the university. They would not be talking if they did not love Moi University. So for that, I really appreciate their comments. But as a Committee of Education, we'll be able to get the facts. We'll be able to give you the figures so that we actually start to understand. But I can tell you for a fact that Moi University became a victim of being too generous. If that generosity was part of mismanagement, it was. Because that's exactly what happened. It's spreading all the way to Karisa. In fact, I personally even opposed Karisa. And I said, let Jomo Kenyatta, which is nearer to Karisa, go to Karisa. But at the end of the day, who fought for this? Members of parliament from Karisa. We are fighting for Moi University to go to Karisa. Because again, Moi University students love their institution. So a member of parliament who was a former member of Moi University staff said, no, I don't want any other university. So we have had these issues, and some of us as parliamentarians have also affected the way the university is run, because we are either fighting for promotion, like in the 15, we had 5 that were actually as a product, as a result of members of parliament fighting to have universities. Nothing was wrong with it because we needed universities. Our students did not have enough space. But we need to really critically look at that. I only say that Moi University was a victim because it spent too much money that was not its own money. And it would be nice to staple that in this house so that all of us get to understand, and then we deal with the mismanagement issues. Mr. Speaker, I support this report. Let's continue to get money to go to where the functions are. Let's increase the amount of money that goes to counties because the functions are being increased. With those remarks, I support, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Professor Kamar, for your contribution. And now, honorable members, there being no other senator who is desirous of contributing to this particular report, I call upon Senator Mugatana, who is the mover of the bill, of the motion report, to reply.
Mr. Speaker, may I take this opportunity to really sincerely thank honorable senators who made very impassioned contribution to this report. Mr. Speaker, when I moved this report, I said that this is one of the most important constitutional mandate that any senator who is elected from his county knows he must execute. And Mr. Speaker, every one of us, with exception of those who have probably traveled on official duty, was able to put the issues that were captured in that report. Mr. Speaker, I respect the diversity of opinion that was expressed in the debate, and I listened carefully to every senator who spoke to this report. Mr. Speaker, as I reply, I think I'm better informed now than even when I was moving this report. So I really truly thank honorable members and the Council of Governors. I believe the governors are listening. The message is clear. Members of the Senate, they may have diverse opinions, but they were united in one thing: please develop your own source revenue so that going forward, we will not be continually be dependent on the equitable share to survive running the counties. Number two, members of the Senate have expressed a very strong view that resources within the county, once we have released them from here, will be utilized properly as intended. So that, Mr. Speaker, we will not have money released by the Senate through these bills, and then they go down there and then services are not given to the people. Mr. Speaker, thirdly, members may have had diverse opinions, but they agreed that time has come that money that is allocated from the budget should follow function. And Mr. Speaker, the counties have been given a heavy load of functions, and the national government is not releasing the requisite funds so that our counties may develop. Mr. Speaker, with all this divergent opinion, this House, Mr. Speaker, is a house of reason, is a senior house, is a house that is full of people with a lot of experience in their own professional fields, even in political leadership, in administration. Mr. Speaker, I truly believe that by the time that we will come to bring this matter to a vote, we will have reached a consensus. Maybe those who expressed opinion differently from the report will be persuaded. And we hope that as many of us will come to support. And for me, the reason is that we have had a drop in the expected collections. And I remember very well, Mr. Speaker, which I mentioned, but it is good for me to underscore this point, that, Mr. Speaker, even during the negotiations, during the mediation process, after the cameras were removed, we were given facts and figures by the Treasury, so that the question now moved from there is the wishful and the reality. There is the reality, what can we disburse and what is available. So, Mr. Speaker, and I think the debate here also captured that idea that we need also to be, alive to what the realities, fiscal realities that we live in the country today. So, Mr. Speaker, with those very many remarks, again, I want to say thank you very much. And I still want to say thank you to the leadership that we enjoyed, and Senator Ali Roba. Our team was led by him, and the team from Parliament National Assembly was led by Honorable Dindi Nyoro. So, Mr. Speaker, I still want to urge members to consider supporting this report. The issues they have raised, we can still keep talking. Fortunately, we are not going to vote today. So as I move, I prepare, as I reply, Mr. Speaker, I pray between now and the time we will vote, we shall persuade each other to support this report. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, with those many remarks, I beg to reply, and I request, pursuant to Standing Order number 66, sub 3, that the putting of the question be deferred to a later date. Mr. Speaker, I submit. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Mungatana. Pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 66, the putting of the question as regards the report is deferred to the next sitting of the House. Clerk, please call the next order.
Order number 9, motion, consideration of the National Assembly amendments to the Cotton Industry Development Bill, Senate Bills number 5 of 2023.
Honorable Senators, I call upon the Chairperson, Standing Committee on Agriculture, Livestock and Fisheries, Senator Murango, to move the motion.
Asante sana Mstahiki Spika. Mstahiki Spika, nikitaka kuomba kwamba mswada kuhusu ustawishaji wa pamba, marekebisho ambayo ilitoka katika bunge la taifa, mswada nambari 5 kwa mwaka 2023. Yes.
Could you please read out in under as reflected in the order that the National Assembly amendments?
Thank you.
Before you contribute in the language of your comfort.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the National Assembly amendments to the Cotton Bill, Development Bill, Senate number 5 of 2023, be now considered. Mr. Speaker, if you allow, because I'm a member.
Proceed in Kiswahili, Senator Murango.
Asante Mstahiki Spika. Mstahiki Spika, mswada wa pamba ambao uko mbele yetu ulimaliziwa katika bunge la seneti na ukaenda katika bunge la kitaifa ili uweze kuzingatiwa baada ya kufanya misururu ya mikutano na uhamasishaji wa umma katika sehemu tofauti tofauti na kamati ya kilimo katika bunge ya seneti kuleta ripoti katika seneti. Mstahiki Spika, ilipoenda kule kuna marekebisho ambayo bunge la kitaifa imeomba iweze kufanywa na ikarudishwa tena katika kamati ya ukulima, uvuvi na uchumi wa uvuvi samawati katika bunge la seneti, na tukakaa chini tukafalia njuga swala hilo, tukaangalia mambo yote ambayo inafaa kuangaliwa, na Mstahiki Spika, tukakubaliana ya kwamba marekebisho yote ambayo yalitoka katika bunge la kitaifa inafaa kuzingatiwa. Kwa hivyo hakuna senator yote ambaye alikuja kupinga marekebisho ambayo ilitoka katika bunge la kitaifa. Na kwa hivyo Mstahiki Spika, ni kusema ya kwamba ripoti ambayo tulienda na tukaiandika na kuileta katika bunge la seneti ipo, na hivyo nimesema ndo inasema kwamba tunakubaliana na marekebisho yote ambayo pia iko katika ratiba ya seneti ambayo tuko nayo siku ya leo. Mstahiki Spika, huu mswada ni mswada muhimu sana kwa sababu ukizingatia kwamba maeneo ya kiuchumi ambayo inaitwa EPZ, ambayo viwanda mingi ambazo zinatengeneza nguo ambayo inatokana na pamba, leo hii ni kusema viwanda vile sasa wananunua nguo, vitambara za nguo kutoka nje, sana sana nchi ya Bangladesh. Mstahiki Spika, tulienda katika gatuzi la Busia na tukawa na mkutano, na nichukue nafasi hii kumshukuru sana Senator wa Busia Omtata kwa sababu alitupatia nafasi nzuri ya kukaa na kuongea na wanabusia, na serikali imejenga kiwanda mpya ya kuweza kushughulikia pamba na kuitoa nguo. Shida ambayo ilikuweko ni kwamba hakuja kuwa na sheria muhimu ambayo inaratibu venye biashara ya ukuzaji wa pamba na uzaji wa pamba unafaa kufanywa, na tukafikiria kwamba ni vizuri mswada ambao uliletwa mbele yetu na Senator Beth Siengo tuweze kuzingatia na kufanya kuwa ni msingi katika ile biashara ya kilimo, ili iwe ni kilimo biashara, sio bora kilimo. Mstahiki Spika, maeneo yote nchi hii ukizunguka kuanzia Nyanza kwenda magharibi mwa nchi, ukuje upande wa bonde la Ufa, ukuje maeneo ya kati, uende Ukambani na uende mpaka Lamu katika eneo la Pwani, ni kwamba hiyo maeneo yote pamba kwa sababu inastahimili ukame inaweza kuzwa katika sehemu nyingi. Ni kitenga uchumi kizuri kama tutawekesha na kuhakikisha kwamba kuna mtaji wa kukuza pamba, pembejeo zinapatikana, na Mstahiki Spika, kama mbegu ambazo zinaitwa za BT ambayo kilo moja ni zaidi ya shilingi 7,000, lakini ni pamba nzuri sana ikipewa wakulima. Na kwa hivyo tukaonelea kwamba
Kama wakulima watapewa nafasi na wapewe pembejeo, wataweza kunufaika pakubwa na pamba. Mr. Speaker, pamba ni mmea ambao una maana sana, kwa sababu ukitoa ile pamba ambayo kwa kimombo inaitwa lint, inaenda kutengeneza nguo. Ukitoa mbegu ya ndani na kuifinya, inatokanga mafuta, na ingine ndio wanaita kwa kimombo biodiesel, na hata mafuta ya kutumia katika kupikia. Na ile ambayo inambaki ndio ina keki kutoka kwa pamba, cotton seed cake. Inakuanga ni nzuri sana, ama ni kiungo muhimu katika kutengeneza vyakula ambavyo vinalisha wanyama, kwa wale wengi ambao ni wakulima wa ng'ombe wa maziwa, mbuzi wa maziwa, nguruwe na hata kuku. Mr. Speaker, hiyo ni kusema pamba ni mmea ambao kila kitu ambao inatolewa kwa pamba inatumika vilivyo, na inaweza kuwa ni kitega uchumi kikubwa kama tunaweza shughulikia pamba na kuhakikisha kwamba viwanda vinatosha. Lakini jambo ambalo lilikuwa kubwa tulipokuwa tukizunguka ni kwamba viwanda vingi vya pamba, kimombo ginneries, mingi zimevunjika, zingine ziliuzwa, zingine mashamba, wakilitimba walikuja wakavamia mashamba na wakayachukua kwa ajili ya ulaghai. Kwa mfano mzuri ni kiwanda cha pamba ambako kilikuwa mahali kunaitwa Ngurubani katika gatuzi la Kirinyaga. Utakuja kupata kwamba machini hazipo, ziliimbiwa, kiwanja hiko, ishaenda. Lakini tuna mpango kama kamati ya kwamba mswada huu utakapopita, kwa sababu sasa nadhani hii ndio safari ya mwisho ili uweze kupita, kwamba tutazunguka tukiangalia hizi viwanda, na pia tutahusisha pia katika wizara ya mashamba kuhakikisha kwamba ile mashamba ilikuwa ya kiserikali ambapo pamba ilikuwa inaenda pale kushughulikiwa na kusaidia mkulima, kwamba hizo viwanja vimerudishwa. Tuhakikishe kwamba kama ni machini zimerudishwa, wakulima katika Kenya nzima waweze kufaidika. Mr. Speaker, ukiangalia sana sana katika maongezi, ama unapotoka hapa na uende sehemu kame, ukitoka uende Kitui, ukitoka uende Makueni, ukitoka uende Busia, ukitoka uende maeneo kama ya Homa Bay mahali Senator Kajwang' ametoka, swali ambao unaulizwa na wale wananchi ni kwamba tunasikia watu wakitanja majani chai, tunasikia wakitanja kahawa, tunasikia wengine wakitanja miwa, tunasikia wengine wakitanja majani chai, lakini chetu ni kipi katika hizi gatuzi? Kwa sababu pia sisi ni walipa kondi ambao tunafaa kushikiliwa, ambao tunafaa kupewa mitaji, ambao tunafaa kusamehewa mikopo, ili pia sisi kama walipa kondi tusikie sisi ni wa Kenya. Kwa hivyo pamba ambao tunaongelea siku ya leo ni moja wapo ya mmea ambao unaweza stawisha na kusawasisha Wakenya wengi katika Kenya hii, ili kila Mkenya asikie kwamba ni Mkenya na hajatengwa kando. Mr. Speaker, Lamu inakuza pamba, ukienda Kilifi utapata wanakuza pamba, na kwa hivyo kamati ambayo mimi ni mwenyekiti, kwa kundura zake Mwenyezi Mungu, tunahakikisha kwamba ile mswada ambao inakuja yote kila sehemu katika nchi hii itakuwa na kitenga uchumi. Kama ni wale watu ambao wanavua samani, Mr. Speaker, nadhani kuna kasoro kidogo hapa.
Senator Murango, the chair previously ruled that whenever you are in the house, you've got to keep your cell phones on silent mode.
Samani,
take note of that.
Samani Mr. Speaker, nitahakikisha hiyo nimefuatilia. Mr. Speaker, nilikuwa namalizia kwa kusema ya kwamba mmea wa pamba ni mojawapo mmea ambao unasawasisha jamii nyingi katika Kenya hii, ambao inafanya Wakenya wasikie kama Wakenya ikifufuliwa, ili kusiwe wakati kuna watu ambao wanasamehewa mikopo, kuna watu wanapewa mitaji, iwe kwamba kila Mkenya hako na mmea ambao unampatia pesa ya kuweza kujikimu. Mr. Speaker, nilikuwa nimesema kwamba ukiangalia takwimu ya mahali ambao pamba inapandwa, pamba ni mmea mmoja unaweza kustahimili ukame sana. Ni kwamba Kenya nzima hii sehemu nyingi sana inaweza kuzwa pamba. Mr. Speaker, pia katika hii kamati tumekuja na miswanda ama na sheria zingine za kutunga pia kwa jamii ambazo ni wafugaji, kuhakikisha pia wao wakati inafika wakati
wa kunufaika pia wananufaika na kilimo biashara ambayo pia wanafanya. Mstahiki Spika, nitamalizia niseme ya kwamba mswada huu utakapotiwa sahihi na Rais wa Jamhuri ya Kenya, utakuwa ni mswada wa 3 ambao umepitia katika kamati ya ukulima katika bunge ya Seneti, ambao tumehusika vilivyo kuhakikisha kwamba imepita. Ingawa lazima niseme, kwa sababu kuna mswada ambao tayari umepita, mswada wa miwa, mwenye alikuwa pia ni mdhamini mwenza katika huo mswada alikuwa Senator Wafula Wakoli ambao ni wa kamati ya ukulima. Kuna mswada wa kahawa ambao sasa huku unasomwa kwa mara ya 3 katika bunge ya Seneti ambao pia ni umepita. Kuna mswada ambao umeletwa na Senator Beth Siengo ambao ni wa kamati ya ukulima ambao ndio tunakuja kuamalizia, na niseme kwamba kwa jumla tuko na miswada 15 ambayo imeletwa katika ambao imepitia katika hii kamati ya ukulima. Lakini nitakuwa pia nikalili wa akili kama sitasema ya kwamba kuna mswada moja, Mstahiki Spika, ambao ulituuma sana kama kamati. Mswada ambao ulikuwa unahusu ndengu, ambao ulikuwa umeletwa na Senator Enoch Kiwambua. Ndengu ni kama pamba, inakuzwa kila mahali. Nalipochukua nafasi kuongea pia na wanabunge wa bunge la kitaifa, kujua kwa nini mswada ulikuja ukafifia na ukafa kwa njia ambayo haikueleweka, ni kwamba wengi waliokuwa naongea walikuwa naongea kwa ile hali ya kutojua. Unasikia mtu anasema kuna mswada wa ndengu, kuna mtu atalipishwa shilingi milioni 1. Lakini adhari ya kufanya siasa na miswada ambayo inapita katika bunge la kitaifa na bunge la Seneti ni moja. Mstahiki Spika, ni kwamba tulipokaa kwa sababu ya mswada wa miwa hakukuwa na siasa nduni. Huo mswada rais ashatia kidole. Mswada wa kahawa haujakuwa na siasa. Hivi karibuni utatiwa kidole kwa sababu nasoma kwa mara ya 3. Mswada ambao tuko nao, mswada wa papa, haujatiwa siasa. Tayari kwa sababu tunakubaliana na bunge ni kusema unaenda kutiwa kidole. Wale wakulima wa ndengu wamepoteza nafasi muhimu sana sana wakati huu ambao serikali inapambana kuhakikisha kwamba kuna lishe bora na chakula na usalama wa chakula nchini upo. Mstahiki Spika, Mstahiki Spika, pia ningesema ni changamoto tulio nayo kama Seneti kwamba tunafaa tuna miswada inayokuja hapa, tuwe pia na wale wanaohusika kuhakikisha kwamba wananchi wanajua tunapofanya na kueleza waziwazi, wanaelezewa. Kwa sababu kuna watu wanatumia miswada inayokuja katika bunge la kitaifa, katika sakafu unaona kuna watu wanatumia hiyo nafasi kupigana kisiasa, kwa sababu wanafikiria huyu mbunge akipitisha hii atapata umaarufu, atakuja kuchaguliwa nani wala nani. Watu wanasahau ya kwamba wanaopitisha na kuzingatia kwamba miswada imepita, wengi hata lile jambo wanavyofuatilia si wakulima, lakini sisi wote ni Wakenya. Kwa mfano, Mstahiki Spika, mimi nimetoka eneo la Kirinyaga ambako sisi hatukuzi miwa, lakini ilipokuja mbele yangu na ukiangalia wakulima miwa wamekuwa katika lindi la umaskini kwa miaka ambayo hatuwezi hesabu. Tulipoona nyuso katika chemilu cha wazee ambao wamelima miwa na bado ni maskini, tuliposikia kilio sa wakulima ambao wamelima miwa lakini watoto wao wasomi, wale afya zao zimedhoofika na bado ni wakulima na wameendelea kulima, kukiwa na utu na ukiwa kiongozi lazima ulivalie njuga jambo lile kuhakikisha kwamba wale watu wamepata haki yao. Wakati rais alisema kwamba mswada wa sukari uko hapa uzingatiwe, tulichoma mafuta usiku kucha na mchana kutwa. Mimi kama mwenyekiti mwenza wa mbunge kutoka Emmanuel Wangwe, tukakaa chini tukahakikisha kwamba tumemaliza mswada. Saa hii tunapoongea kuna matumaini katika wakulima wa miwa, kuna matumaini katika wakulima wa kahawa, kuna matumaini katika wakulima majani chai, kwa sababu najua pia Mstahiki Spika, kama Senator Bomet, wewe pia umeleta mswada kujaribu kulainisha mambo ya ukulima wa chai. Lakini tumaini ya wakulima wa ndengu iko wapi? Tumaini ya wakulima wa pamba iko wapi? Kutakuwa na tumaini kama tutakuja na kuhakikisha kwamba miswada kama hii inapita bila kuletewa siasa ambazo hazina maana. Mstahiki Spika, Mstahiki Spika, nikimalizia, Waswahili husema wavuvi wa pweza hukutana mwambani. Ningesema sisi kama wavuvi wa pweza maseneta tukutane hapa, ndio mwamba wetu, tukuje tuunge mkono mswada huu na marekebisho yote, ili wakulima wa pamba wapate nafasi na waweze kuendelea na ukulima wao na waweze kufaidika. Asante sana Mstahiki Spika.
You need to call on someone to second.
Samani na kwa hayo nitamwita Senator wa Kitui, Senator Wambua, kuunga mkono huu mswada.
Senator Wambua, as you second the bill, you also proceed to make your contribution, because I've noticed you've made a request.
I thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I take this opportunity to second the bill and the report on the cotton industry development bill. Mr. Speaker, I must begin by thanking the promoter of the bill, Senator Beth Siengo, and the committee of the Senate on Agriculture for making bold steps, the Speaker, to process the bill to this point. And I also want to thank our partner committee in the National Assembly for proposing certain amendments that, as you have heard our chair say, Mr. Speaker, I sit in the Agriculture Committee of the Senate, and the committee has gone through the provisions of the amendments as proposed by the National Assembly, and we have agreed with them. Mr. Speaker, cotton in this country, at some point, not now, used to be a major source of foreign exchange. A lot of Kenyan farmers earned a lot of money from this crop. Besides the money that they earned as foreign exchange, the Speaker, this country also benefited from the cotton industry, because apart from the farmers that were growing the crop, then we used to have a lot of ginneries that were processing the cotton into yarn, and then we also used to have a lot of vibrant, Mr. Speaker, textile companies, Rivertex, Ikomi. When we were growing up, Mr. Speaker, because that time we used to have cotton fields in Kitui, and the story of second-hand clothes, popularly known as Mutumba, was not a very popular story when we were growing up in the 70s, late 70s, Mr. Speaker, and early 80s, because then cotton growing was still very vibrant, and people would easily buy newly manufactured clothes in the country, because the raw material for that then would be cotton. Mr. Speaker, the failure by successive governments to properly regulate the industry led to the collapse of commercial cotton farming as we used to know it. I do know and appreciate, Mr. Speaker, that there are still regions that are supported to grow cotton, and they are sustaining quite a number of ginneries and garment processing factories. Mr. Speaker, not very long ago, we had a commitment from the outgoing ambassador of the United States of America in Kenya, Meg Whitman, that the United States government would continue to promote the revival of cotton farming in this country, so that this nation and farmers from Kenya and business people from Kenya can also continue to benefit from the provisions of AGOA, that is the African Growth Opportunities Act. Mr. Speaker, the sorry state of affairs as we stand today is that we have cotton or garment companies in this country that are forced to import cotton and cotton products from as far as China and other African countries to process and manufacture clothes. And yet, we have areas in this country that are very, very conducive for cotton growing. The Speaker, it is my prayer and my wish that this bill will pass and be ascended into law by the President, so that then the benefits of cotton farming in the regions that cotton is grown, farmers may now begin to realize those benefits. Speaker, as the Senator of Kitui, I want to confirm to this House that cotton farming is a very lucrative and rewarding farming activity in Kitui and the region if it can be properly supported. We still have some ginaries that have stalled that don't operate. Of course, most of them use outdated technology, so they are not even functional. But the climate, the climatic conditions from Kitui and the region, and Mr. Speaker, for the information of the House, Kitui, Machakos, and Makueni are no longer Lower Eastern region, they are Mount Kenya South region. So that region, Mr. Speaker, is very, very suitable for cotton farming. There is a matter that the Senator for Kirinyaga, my chairman in the Agriculture Committee, has touched on. And I want him to hear this, but Senator Manzo would not allow him to hear. I would want him to hear this. That, Mr. Speaker, we are here to represent our counties. We are here to represent the wishes and aspirations of people from our counties who are Kenyans and who have a right for representation and proper support from the government of the day, irrespective of their relationship with that government. As Speaker, I want to thank my chairman, Senator Morango, because so far, as he said, this is the third bill that we have successfully processed. And we expect that very soon it will be ascended into law by the President, and the benefits contained therein then will trickle down to the farmers. But as Speaker, we as a committee are also a worried lot. And I also want to bring this to the attention of the Speaker, so that the Speaker can also give proper direction on this matter. As Speaker, I sponsored the dengue bill, and all the senators in the House during the time for debate on that bill supported the bill and voted for the bill. they proposed amendments, and the committee considered all the proposals for amendments here. And the Secretariat helped the committee to process what we believed was a very good bill to help dengue farmers across the country. The Speaker, when the matter went to the National Assembly, first of all, it lay there. It was there for the longest time. And when it finally came up, we heard strange things, Mr. Speaker, that the intention of the bill was to make sure that farmers obtain licenses to grow dengue. Speaker, I want to stand on the floor of this House today as I support the cotton bill to say that if there is any bill, any dengue bill, that proposes the that proposes the licensing of farmers to grow the crop, then that is not the bill that we processed in the committee. That's not the bill that the Senate passed. That must be another bill from another place, because that provision is not there in that bill, Mr. Speaker. And on the basis of that bill, the bill was shot down at the National Assembly. But what is even more worrying, Mr. Speaker, is that naturally, if a bill is rejected in one house after having been passed in the other house, the natural consequence of that is to take that bill through mediation. That's the natural consequence. But here's a situation where, Mr. Speaker, once that bill was rejected at the National Assembly, then I have not heard of any communication about any mediation on that bill, and the matter has just died there. Mr. Speaker, the dengue farmers in this country deserve better. They are Kenyans. They want to be supported just as the tea farmers want to be supported, just as the coffee farmers want to be supported, just as sugar farmers want to be supported, just as any other farmer, even livestock farmers, want and deserve to be supported. Then dengue farmers in this country deserve to be supported. And let's remove partisan petty politics from legislation, because that will not help anyone, Mr. Speaker. I expect, Mr. Speaker, that at the convenience of this House, perhaps when we resume, then, Mr. Speaker, a mediation will be constituted, a mediation team will be constituted to look into the dengue bill and see if there is any clause there that talks about licensing of farmers, and that will be the first clause we are going to be removing from that bill. But I can assure you, Mr. Speaker, there is no such clause in that bill. Mr. Speaker, with those many remarks and in cognition of the fact that, Mr. Speaker, we need to also transact some other business in the House, I support the amendments, I think. I second, Mr. Speaker, I second.
Thank you, Senator Wambua. Now, Honorable Senators, I propose the question that the National Assembly amendments to the Cotton Industry Development Bill, Senate Bills number 5 of 2023, be now considered. I can see we have got members who are willing to contribute to this, and I'll start with Senator Mongatana Danson.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to make my contribution on this matter. Mr. Speaker, when we were growing up in Tana River, there was the Hola Cotton Ginnery. And Mr. Speaker, the Hola Cotton Ginnery was a great source of employment to many people, Mr. Speaker. People would wake up in the morning, head to the ginnery. There would be others who would be coming out from night duty. Mr. Speaker, there was a lot of flow of money within Hola. Hola town is the headquarters of Tana River County, Mr. Speaker. Many people also would visit Tana River County, the buyers. There would be a lot of activity, Mr. Speaker. Lorries would come to ferry people to work. Lorries would come to collect the product. Mr. Speaker, money would flow in a very predictable way. The town was a town that was bustling with economic vibrancy. Mr. Speaker, people would come from far-off towns in Kenya to come and settle, to come and try and do business within Hola town. Mr. Speaker, unfortunately, the Hola cotton ginnery died, and it died a very sad death. Mr. Speaker, when I heard the chairman of Agriculture Committee moving, I called him aside and asked him, you have been mentioning various counties where cotton was being produced and cotton growing and production needs to be revived. Why not mention Tana River? And he has promised, Mr. Speaker, that he will come in that direction. Mr. Speaker, why am I mentioning this? In some of our counties, Mr. Speaker, like Tana River County, the businesses that are going to actually spur economic growth as they used to in many years ago when we were growing up, they were agri-based businesses, Mr. Speaker. Those businesses that were doing some form of manufacturing from the products that came from farming, they were the ones that were giving greater source of employment to the people of Tana River County. Mr. Speaker, when the ginnery closed down and we were told somebody has purchased the infrastructure, we expected that there will be injection of capital, there will be a fresh start, maybe new machineries will be brought. But Mr. Speaker, that was just a dream. Nothing has happened since that time. Mr. Speaker, we have been following. And personally, Mr. Speaker, when elected as senator, we have been following this matter. We have been promised again by the national government that they will revive that cotton ginnery. That in fact, that there is such a demand for cotton that it will be necessary as a matter of demand-supply economics, that they will support the growth of the industry within Tana River County. But Mr. Speaker, that promise has not come to happen. Mr. Speaker, I want to join those who have said many times that we wish well for those who are doing coffee farming, they get government support. Tea farming, they get government support. And so on, they get government support. But for those of us who have been doing cotton farming, using irrigation in Hola, we have not gotten any government support since the closure. There's been no attempt at all, Mr. Speaker, to revive that industry, despite promises being given by government. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, we are happy that today we are passing a law that says that they will be deliberate in supporting the growth of cotton industry within Kenya. And Mr. Speaker, I pray that since cotton grows in areas that have rain deficiency, such as Tana River and other areas that have been mentioned before, Mr. Speaker, we pray that the government will put money. This law, we are going to pass it. As we debate here, I know many people will support it, and I'm asking all other colleagues who are not seated but listening to this debate from outside, that this is one crop that if we give it proper support, proper infrastructure support, like we are giving to coffee, to pyrethrum, to sugar, to tea, Mr. Speaker, a lot of farmers from areas that were previously thought to be marginalized. They will start making good money, and they will start living their life, the dream that Kenya promises. So, Mr. Speaker, I stand here to really support this bill in the mediated version. I support the amendments that have been brought. And, Mr. Speaker, this is a promise to the people of Tana River and other areas in this country that have capacity and potential to grow this crop, that, Mr. Speaker, it is going to help our people. And there is hope that, in fact, this industry is going to start growing again. So, Speaker, when we heard that Rivertex has been reopened, Rivertex has started working again, and that they have cotton deficiency, Mr. Speaker, the joy and celebration of the promise that there will be a revival of the industry back home in Tana River County by the national government was great. But, Mr. Speaker, Rivertex has been operating, and they have been importing their cotton. And, Mr. Speaker, always importation tends to kill local industry. Importation tends to drain our reserves. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to sit down by making a final plea that as we support this new law, Mr. Speaker, we want to urge, even in the proposed supplementary estimates by the national government, that some money be put towards supporting the farmers in this area. Because if we support our farmers there, this is where the rubber meets the stone. This is where our people will start benefiting from good and wise leadership. Other crops like sugarcane have now seen the light, and there is real true hope, because they had been forgotten. There was a bad structure and how it was being managed in this country. Then we passed that law, and now farmers can look forward to a brighter future. Now we are on cotton. We are praying that the farmers in this country, farmers in Tana River County, they will now look forward to better earnings. Mr. Speaker, with those many remarks, I beg to support this law. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Mungatana. Now, honorable members, to facilitate the conclusion of this particular motion, I exercise the provisions of Standing Order 34-2A to extend the sitting for another 10 minutes. I will allow Senator Kajwang 5 minutes to contribute, then the mover to reply, then we defer the putting of the question to a later date. Senator Kajwang, kindly proceed to take your
Thank you.
5 minutes. We look at how far you'll go. We can extend as long as we are within the 15 minutes that we are allowed by the standing orders to extend the sitting of the
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for your generosity. I come from a cotton growing zone. I'm a member of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and the history of the Seventh-day Adventist Church is synonymous with the history of cotton growing in my region. A pioneer Adventist pastor called Pastor Kaskalen, when he introduced the Adventist Church, he also introduced modern schools. He introduced modern medicine. It does not mean we didn't have medicine, but he brought in the modern pharmaceuticals. But he also introduced cotton as a cash crop. Over the years, the Rachuonyo region, the area around Kindu Bay. Kindu Bay was a town that was founded on the wealth and the riches of cotton. Today, Kindu Bay is a shell. It's a pale shadow of itself because the cotton industry collapsed in the 1980s as a result of the structural adjustment programs. As you drive around Nyanza and Western and even Ukambani, there are centers that are called store pamba. Store pamba meaning that is where the warehouse, the aggregation center for cotton was located. And those store pambas, they are all over the main highways from Homa Bay to Kisumu. It tells you how valuable that industry was back in the days. Mr. Speaker, the production of cotton is not where it should be. It has averaged at about 25,000 metric tons over the years, but now it's about 7,000 versus a potential of 200,000 tons. And Mr. Speaker, there are many factors. There was a liberalization, the structural adjustment programs. There was also the issue of mitumba, which then led to inflows of second-hand clothes that competed with locally produced fabric and textile. But also there's the issue of the quality of seed. Mr. Speaker, there's been debate on whether BT cotton should be allowed, and the jury is still out there whether we are making the right decision. But the right decision must be adoption of seed and technology that is pest resistant. The generations, and even growing up, cotton growing was a very labor-intensive activity. And Mr. Speaker, there are certain factors of production which may have changed and which may have shifted our comparative advantage as a country. Land is not as big as it was back then. Families are not as big as they were back then. Polygamy thrived because when you are a polygamous man with a huge cotton farm, you had an entire army that would go out to the field to work on the cotton farms and to harvest the farm. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, you notice that one of the things that fueled slavery in the United States and in other countries was cotton production because it was extremely labor-intensive. We need to innovate. We need to ensure that this board that has been proposed in this particular bill is a board that drives innovation, drives the adoption of technology. Because after the repeal of the statutes that abolished slavery in the United States, they still continued growing cotton, but they decided to turn to technology to replace the slaves and forced labor. And so, Mr. Speaker, I support this establishment of the Cotton Board. We, however, need to be very clear and tell the country what our strategy and thought process is with regards to agriculture. This country has evolved our strategies and thoughts around agriculture. When Mwai Kibaki took over, Professor Peter Nyang' Nyong'o and his team came up with the agriculture sector development strategy. And no, it was the SRA, I think it was a strategy for revitalization of agriculture. And it is that strategy for revitalization of agriculture that led to the consolidation of the various agricultural boards into one super agency called the Agriculture, Food and Fisheries Authority. Over the years, we've been in a process of unbundling that AFA, because now we've got a fisheries authority, we have a tea authority, we've got a dairy board, we are now having a livestock authority in the cards, and now we are talking of a cotton authority and a sugar board. So we need to be very clear, very deliberate when it comes to policy and when it comes to industrial strategy, because industrial strategy is the thought process that takes advantage of a nation's comparative advantage so as to elevate it in the global market. Our comparative advantage lies around agriculture because of favorable weather. Our comparative advantage lies around logistics because of location, and those are the things that we must exploit. Right now, with the election of Donald Trump as the President of the United States of America, we are not sure of the future of the AGOA arrangement. And we know that Athi River and the EPZs, most of them thrive on that AGOA arrangement. So, Mr. Speaker, I know this is outside this bill, but those of us in the Agriculture Committee, we now need to bring the executive so that they pronounce themselves on the country's direction and strategic thinking when it comes to that sector. Because from the days of Anyang' Nyong'o, when we had the strategy for revitalizing agriculture, there have been changes. Along the way, in 2010, we decided to devolve agriculture. That was a very, very significant policy direction for the agriculture sector. The agriculture policy was published in the year 2016. I am not sure, my chairman, whether that policy has been adopted by the cabinet. Because if a nation whose economy is agriculture, is based on agriculture, which provides the highest number of employment opportunities, does not have a sessional paper or a policy statement that has been adopted by the cabinet, it means that we are flying on autopilot. These are things that we will push the government and the executive to put in place. Mr. Speaker, within my remaining 1 or 2 minutes, let's ensure that even as we provide the role of county governments in this, legislation, that county governments then do not become a hindrance. Let them be facilitators. Sometimes county governments can be a problem by introducing additional tariffs, by introducing additional cess, by introducing additional registration requirements. I have seen somewhere in the report that even where the county government has the responsibility of registering cotton farmers, there will be no cost to it. But let's also think about the distribution of seed and input to those farmers. It should never be a centralized approach. Mr. Speaker, perhaps we need to take the approach that the Kenya Tea Development Authority has taken, where distribution of fertilizer to tea farmers is not done by a central bureaucracy, but is done through the tea factories. And that should apply here, so that we don't have situations of those Linturi fertilizers finding their way in cotton farms, and therefore compromising the output of our cotton farmers. Mr. Speaker, I support this. There are a lot of things I would have said about this, but ultimately, as a country, we need to find those things that we are good at, invest in the things that we are good at. Cotton would be one of those things. Coffee is already one of those things. Tea is one of those things. Let's take advantage of the things that we are good at and project ourselves as a leader in those areas. If the independence fathers were able to make cotton a valuable product, if entire economies, like in Western and Ukambani and even parts of Tana River, parents could take their children to school on the basis of cotton earnings 30, 40 years ago. What about today, when you have better technology, when you've got better varieties, better breeds, when you've got a bigger population that can provide a market for our cotton? Mr. Speaker, this should not be seen as another process of import substitution, but in our minds, we must prepare ourselves that we'll still need to compete with the best when it comes to the cotton and textiles and apparel sector. People like Vietnam, people like Lesotho, people like even Botswana, they are countries that have made this a comparative advantage, and we must be ready to compete with them. Let us not cheat our farmers that we will shield them from the vagaries of globalization. They must fight. They must find their space within the global markets, because producing cotton is one thing, connecting the farmer to markets is another. We must encourage them to grow cotton in Kindu, in Kitui, in Busia, but connect them to global markets the way the AGOA opportunity has presented itself to us. But ask ourselves that if AGOA was to collapse, what are we going to do with Athi River? Can we find alternative markets? And Mr. Speaker, I believe we can find alternative markets, but we must fix our labor practices. Countries that have succeeded in the apparel sector also have tried to regulate the cost of labor. I think Kenya, we are very litigious, and we'll always be talking of a certain minimum wage, but we are also putting in a lot of payroll taxes that then makes the Kenyan worker more expensive. And so some of these big corporations are happier to go to Bangladesh, to Pakistan, and those other economies. Mr. Speaker, I support and I look forward to the enactment of this law, and I look forward to the day when the cotton farmers of Homa Bay and Nyanza are going to start having bank accounts and are going to have money in those accounts. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Kajwang. I now call upon Senator from Kirinyaga, Senator Murango, to respond. To reply, sorry.
Asante sana mstahiki Spika, kwa dakika 3 peke yake nishukuru wale maseneta ambao wameunga mabadiliko ambayo yameleta katika mswada wa pamba. Nataka kuwashukuru kwa sababu ya hayo. Ya pili niseme ya kwamba pamba ni kitu muhimu sana kwa sababu inakuwa malighafi ya chakula ya wanyama, mafuta. Na ningeomba Senator Kanjong ambao ni mmoja ambao tuko katika kamati ya ukulima, tulitembea Kitui tukapata ya kwamba mafuta yanayotolewa katika mbegu za pamba ndio inatumika katika kutoa nguvu za umeme kwa majenereta zao, na bado inatumia kama mafuta kwa gari zao. Na najua Senator Kajwang pia ndio mwenyekiti wetu katika kamati ambayo inahusika na mabadiliko ya tabia nchi. Kwa hivyo hilo ni jambo nzuri sana pia tukiweza kupata. Kwa hivyo pamba si nguo peke yake. Hili ni malighafi ya vitu zingine nyingi. Mheshimiwa Spika, kwa mujibu wa kanuni za kudumu za Seneti 26(3), ninaomba kwamba swali la mswada huu liahirishwe hadi siku nyingine. Asante sana Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Murango, for your reply. And pass on to the provisions of Standing Order 66. Putting of the question is deferred to the next sitting of the House. And members may now rise. Honorable Senators, it is now 41 minutes past 6, and having concluded the business for which I extended the hours of sitting pursuant to Standing Order 34-2A, the Senate stands adjourned until tomorrow, Thursday, 28th of November, 2024 at 2:30 p.m.